I've been involved in pollution control systems for close to 30 years now, specifically focused on water and wastewater, basically technology and solutions that can be implemented to save water as a resource. The biggest misconception of the current water supply and water availability is that we have a never-ending resource, or we have something that is going to replenish itself. If you look at a lot of the articles on subsidence in California, in Nevada, Arizona, we've drained a lot of the aquifers significantly through agriculture and commercial and industrial processes. We're using it at a more rapid rate than we used it 20 years ago. And we don't seem to be slowing the curve. We're actually increasing the rate that we're consuming it. If you look at, again, the consumer price index as an example, water and sewer as a commodity versus all other utilities is increasing almost exponentially, much higher than any other utility across the board. And so this should be a telltale sign that we have a problem on our hands and that water and sewer are at the crux or at the peak of that. We need to be aware of that resource and that there is a scarcity in that water availability. One of the things that we've been tasked with is basically educating municipalities on the availability of water and how technology can help mitigate some of the shortages. Unfortunately, a lot of the development is predicated on the idea that we have available water resources to last 100 years or more. And that's a scary thing to say because, again, we've never experienced certain climate changes that have happened, like in the Southwest this year. We've had massive heat waves that have come through. Phoenix has had more 110-degree days this year than has ever happened. Woodland Hills, California, a few weeks ago hit 121 degrees. It's never happened. The forest fires that are currently burning throughout California, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Utah, Nevada are also quite earth-shattering in my opinion. And if you look at the satellite images of what's happening in the actual vast areas that are currently burning, it's shocking. And as an example, I believe someone just told me a statistic that 10% of Oregon is currently on fire. That is a shocking statement. One of the statements or the topics that I like to talk about is basically the lake levels of Lake Mead and the drought contingency plan that was just signed this past year for the state of Arizona. There is a plan, and basically the 7 states that receive water from the Colorado River had to come to an agreement on how much they can withdraw from that resource. Lake Mead has a Tier 1 restriction level of 1075. We're currently a few feet away from that Tier 1 restriction. For Arizona, as an example, the impact that it'll have is a 40% reduction in the available withdrawal from the Colorado River. What is scary about that is there's a number of entities that rely upon the Central Arizona Project and the water that's available from the Colorado River. Pinal County, will experience a massive impact, especially to the agricultural production. I've heard someone tell me recently the impact is probably in the hundreds of millions of dollars in lost revenue from basically fallow land farms that just won't have water. It's not just the farmer or the processing people right there that are affected. There's a whole domino effect downstream that happened from the actual packagers, distributors, truckers. Everybody is affected because you have areas that basically won't have water to facilitate the agricultural production. And so there's a huge impact downstream of all of the related industries that are going to be affected by that, and a direct impact to the consumer, because without those available areas growing low-cost produce, the price point of the fruits and vegetables will go up, and all of the related products. When we grow corn and wheat and these other elements, that affects not just the standard produce on the shelf, but all of the other consumer products that we like to have, as well as ethanol and other elements that even go beyond that. There's another report that I'd like to reference, and again, it's made up of hundreds of scientists and specialists that really work to look at climate conditions, climate change, where we will tend to go over the next 4 years. Every 4 years they do a new version of the National Climate Assessment. The last one, which came out in November of 2018, basically talked about the Southwest entering into a drier period, a drier state. And that's something that we need to be aware of. We have, again, significantly increasing population densities in Southern California, in the Phoenix market, in Las Vegas, in Denver, in Salt Lake City, and yet we have diminishing water resources. So we're really at a crux right now in that we have less water with a higher population density. So it's definitely a dangerous recipe. If we need to look at what's called the water energy nexus. The water energy nexus is basically a tie between water and energy production. You need water to make energy, and you need energy to make and clean water. And so they're inextricably tied together. This was actually mentioned to me by one of the U.S. Energy Security Council members that told me this is something that we have to understand, that water, energy, and food are all mutually tied to each other. And we need to be aware that everything touches on the other. People always ask me what I do, and I always like to say that I'm an environmentalist. And I am. I work with power plants, I work with mine sites, I work with large industrial manufacturers, and I like to tell people that we can make significant gains and reductions in the existing infrastructure if we use technology to help mitigate the resources we consume. So for example, if a power plant is in a cooling tower that they have to basically generate the steam and then recapture that water, if they could just increase it by a few cycles of concentration, basically the number of times they reuse the water, we could save billions of gallons. And these are, in most cases, potable drinking water that's being used in these industrial and commercial processes. So I was really happy to hear that the state of Nevada, for example, and the Southern Nevada Water Authority instituted a rebate program. This rebate program offers a $15 per 1,000 gallon rebate savings, basically a credit back to the consumer or the user of this water. It really is a great incentive. And someone was talking to me earlier about how we can actually get industry to do better on what they're doing. And technologies like ours, from Dynamic Water Technologies, we have a process to basically increase the number of cycles. There's a lot of other technology solutions, electrocoagulation, and other methods of technology that has been advanced. I think agriculture in general could benefit greatly by what some of the Israeli technologies have brought about. One of them is drip irrigation. It's not widely used in this country right now. We're too used to using flood irrigation, sprinkler systems, and other processes that lose a tremendous amount to evaporation. Whereas if we use the point source drip irrigation, this could save massive amounts of water. In Israel, they actually recycle over 90% of their water, which is tremendous. Most other countries, Spain, I believe, is the second most recycled water at 17%. And the United States, we recycle 5%. So if you think about how important this resource is to us, 5% recycling of this very valuable resource is not very much. It's one of those situations where if we truly valued water at the price that it was worth, we wouldn't waste a penny or a drop. We wouldn't waste any of it. It's far too valuable, far too scarce, far too precious. Imagine how scared you would be if you turned your faucet on and nothing came out. That's happened actually in some cities around the country. Both in California and Arizona, there's a process called subduction or subsidence. And these processes basically are the physical sinking of the land due to withdrawals from the aquifer. In the Central Valley in California, they've actually seen areas sink as much as 30 feet over the last 100 years. It's a massive extraction of water from the aquifer or basins. And unfortunately, Natural Geographic did an expose on this a number of years ago. They actually showed that the clay layers fully collapsed in the aquifer. Those clay layers took thousands, in some cases millions of years to actually develop. They've said that because they fully collapsed, they're permanently damaged. They're not coming back. You know, California, as an example, produces 1/4 of all of the produce in the United States. And we think about how important that actually is to the U.S. I mean, water, which is the primary element that they really need, should be the most valuable thing that we're dealing with. And yet, it's really a second thought, you know, basically saying, oh, we'll never run out of water. Oh, it'll rain again. The clouds will come back. Yeah, maybe we'll have a couple of years of issue. You know, I wonder before the Dust Bowl happened if they thought that too. And I believe that they did. I believe that they said, oh, it's just a year, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years. You know, how long will it take to make a difference? Hopefully people start realizing it and recognizing the impact that we're currently having. and we make strides to conserve and to recapture and to reuse. You know, I love that. I love the phrase reduce, reuse, recycle. You know, that concept is very logical to me and to most people I talk with. Do we care enough to take a few steps to conserve and preserve the resource that we currently have today for our children and for their children? Do we care enough, and would we take the time and would we implement the technology solutions today to conserve this resource for them? Because we're not going to get free water. We're not going to get this amazing resource just to discover. When I look at, I think about when I was a child and the talk about oil scarcity. And we've seen that they've discovered massive oil reserves and other options, and there's new energy technology coming out. Water is not something that we're likely to find this massive global resource that is readily available. Desalination and other related technologies are available, but we're finding they come at a very high cost for energy. They come at a very high cost economically speaking. They have an environmental impact. The brine water that's produced is degassed, and so now when they're discharging a lot of these brine solutions into harbors and into the ocean, it's causing a lot of other environmental impact because it's killing certain aquatic life. I think that there's a combination of opportunities where you have incentives, where you have these rebate programs like Henderson and Las Vegas have with the Southern Nevada Water Authority. When you have incentives that will help pay for technology solutions, and you have technology solutions that fundamentally provide a net savings over traditional processing, that's a win-win. Just want to thank everybody for giving me the time to express some of my concerns and feelings on water and the preservation thereof. And really, hopefully this will bring to light some of the real concerns that are out there. Very smart people have written a tremendous amount on water scarcity and the realities of where we're at, and I would hope that everyone would find it, be compelled to research this on their own, to read and view some of the literature and videos that are out there today, and just make themselves educated on the topic of water and water scarcity.